Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back. I hope your day has been outstanding. We have a tremendous live stream planned tonight. Big updates all across the board. We're going to start with one of the Democrats' biggest attack dogs that's out there that has been a major problem in American politics for quite some time, using their power, using their hundreds of millions of dollars to set the narrative about hate. And of course, anybody who is politically not aligned with them, they get labeled as people who need to be taken out, removed, censored, even prosecuted and indicted. And this group, of course, has now been indicted themselves, and they're trying to get out of the criminal charges. And they lost a big one today. We're going to talk about it. We also have the text messages from Fauci. We know that last week Ron Johnson said that they got their hands on Fauci's cell phone. Now the text messages have been dropped, and we're going to take a look at what was inside because Fauci knew everything. They were talking about how dangerous the jab was and what problems that it would cause for various people, including pregnant women. And they didn't really communicate that to anybody. Instead, said the exact opposite. So now we can see the truth is coming out, and the wagons, as usual, are circling around Fauci. Then lastly, we've got some big tuition updates on the day. We know that in many states, they have sanctuary policies where they pay for everything for non-citizens, including food, including housing, and of course, including subsidized college tuition. So if you're an out-of-state citizen, you got to pay full price. But if you're a non-citizen who broke into the country illegally, then all of a sudden what you get are discounted rates, and everybody, all of the fellow citizens of America, have to pay for it. Now the DOJ is not playing around. We've covered a couple of these lawsuits, and they've got up to now 17 of them, and a whole slew of new ones just dropped today. So we'll take a look at exactly what's going on inside there as well. And we're very glad that you're joining us here today. And we appreciate you subscribing and liking the video while you're here. And if you're a member, stick around until after the show, because we're going to do an after party today and hang out and debrief on some other items. And so we'll talk about all of that and more. We're confirming that the interwebs have connected themselves all across the fruited plains of America, and it looks like they have indeed, which is tremendous news. That means we can go ahead and get started. And so let's do it, shall we? Starting right now. One of the left's top organizational attack dogs just got crushed. You've heard of them, the Southern Poverty Law Center, or the SPLC for short. They're a leftist 501c3 that fights hate, according to them, and they hate anything that is not in agreement with them. But the problem is they were actually funding the hate. They were taking donations from unsuspecting donors and other Democrats, and then literally paying for the Nazi crosses, for the wood and the fuel to burn the wood. And they would actually even fund people traveling to these protests that they would set up. You'd see these white supremacists marching around. Who paid for that? The SPLC. And Google and academia and many other entities would refer back to their lists and then take those lists and take them as though they're part of the encyclopedia. They'd say, oh, the SPLC validated this group as a hate group. And so then they would just now spread that around everywhere and use that as a baseline. And even one senior executive in the SPLC was literally sleeping with one of these bad actors, one of the so-called Nazis. And they just lost a massive motion. They've been charged with multiple counts for money laundering. They filed a motion to dismiss their claim, but the judge in Alabama was not buying it at all. We've got all of the details here queued up. And before we get into the actual filing, let's not forget what a behemoth this entire organization is. It's the SPLC, and you can see here, even just according to Wikipedia, the amount of money that they've got is wild. Revenue in 24 was $204.8 million. That's a lot of money, and that money was going out for political purposes, of course, to identify certain people as hateful or part of these various groups that need to be castigated and thrown out of society to censor people. And they would spend on this $127 million, which is a lot. And of course, the right needs to build up its own coffers and be able to fight back on this. But this was just what they were spending. Then the Googles would reference them and use them to spread their labels all across the political environment, obviously giving them an additional huge amount of money in order to spread their misinformation. Now, their endowment is almost at $1 billion, and they've been around for quite some time. And what we're learning is, of course, they were the ones who were funding a lot of this. So the neo-Nazis, the white supremacist groups, all these racially motivated violent extremists and so on, they were all being largely funded by the very group that was supposed to be fighting them. And they've been charged with multiple crimes, as we saw. And the judge in Alabama responded to their motion to dismiss. They wanted all of the charges to go away. They said, Trump is being vindictive. He's coming and attacking us. And the judge said, no, he's not. You haven't even articulated any good thesis for what has actually been problematic with this prosecution. We'll get into it. Now, this is coming out of the Middle District of Alabama. They're incorporated in Alabama, and the judge behind this is named Emily C. Marks, and she did not mince words on this, saying that they may want to engage in a bunch of theatrics and kind of, whine and moan about all of the various ways and bad messages that the president has said about their organization, but none of that leads to a valid reason for a dismissal of their criminal charges. This judge was appointed by Trump back in 2018. And we're happy to see a very well-reasoned decision that has now come down. Here is what she just released for us, saying, now, let's be clear. This dispute is about the indictment. She explains that we are fighting because the DOJ charged them, and they're saying it was illegitimate. She says, but the parties here, both sides, are presenting diametrically opposed accounts of that decision. The SPLC, they say they're being vindictively persecuted and prosecuted. All of this is political for just engaging in free speech, trying to couch their criminality under the First Amendment for shame. Now, to remedy this wrong, they say all of this needs to be dismissed. If the president came out and talked smack about him, that means this is vindictive, and so everything needs to go away. Now, the government opposes this. They're saying that has nothing to do with any of it. We're allowed to say what they are doing, comment on their actions, and that's not a basis for calling this vindictive or some sort of a lawfare attack against them. So all of this was been briefed, and the judge said, the party's briefing, like much of our modern political discourse, is heavy on heated rhetoric, right? So it's filled with language that is better suited for cable news or a podcast, which is perfect for us. It emphasizes noise over substance, saying that they're just crying and crying and crying, but they haven't made any good legal arguments. Now, after filtering out all the noise, she says, the court is left to decide only whether the government's decision to prosecute them was constitutionally impermissible. That's it. Does the law mean the president's prosecution or the DOJ's prosecution is invalid? Now, on this record, the SPLC is not entitled to either discovery or to dismissal of the indictment. So that means they are 0 for 2 and they've got blown out. The SPLC has failed to offer some evidence tending to show animus on the part of the prosecutors that are involved in this, and that animus resulted in the prosecution, which would be the showing that's necessary in order to get discovery. And because it cannot satisfy that, it necessarily fails to satisfy the higher standard. They can't even get discovery. They're saying that in the grand jury proceedings, we know grand juries exist behind closed doors, and they're saying there was bad activities that were happening there. And so they want to pierce the grand jury, essentially. Go in there, get materials, get emails back and forth from the prosecutor to the White House and so on, and unpack everything that led to the prosecution. But she says you can't even get there. You haven't even made any showing of animus to reach that status. And so definitely, if you can't do that, we're not going to be dismissing this either. And so therefore, the SPLC's motion is due to be denied, and you lose. And so here's the background. Now, back in 1971, the SPLC was organized as a nonprofit. Yeah, and we know nonprofits are not really supposed to be political, even though they're largely are these days and have been exploited and become tax exempt while they're getting benefits financially. They then wage war against their political opponents. So they said that they're a nonprofit. They're going to go after hate groups and domestic extremists, of course, only on the right. They don't go after the Summer of Love BLMers, for example, who caused $2 billion worth of damages according to many insurance estimates. In pursuit of these so-called, and even the judge puts it in hate groups in quotes, which is great, the SPLC used paid consultants to infiltrate and inform on white supremacist and other extremist groups. Now, the government says that this informant program, where they were literally paying and funding these people, is the basis of their criminal liability. And it's not just that. I mean, that on its own is wrong. But they were also then creating shell companies and shell bank accounts where they would launder their money through these fake entities and then pay these people so that they didn't have to report it and none of it would become publicly visible, because they definitely don't want Democrat grandma somewhere who's saying, I'm donating to you to fight the Nazis, to find out that they're actually paying the Nazis. Now, the SPLC also created a hate map. And remember, they put Charlie Kirk on one of these, which documents purported hate and anti-government extremist groups. And their hate groups are any group that vilifies others based on their race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity, and basically any criticism about anything got you landed on the list. So back in April, the government unsealed an 11-count indictment against them, 6 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts false statement. They were going to federally insured banks and saying, oh no, we're opening up a bank account for a book company. And then a bunch of money would land in that account, and then they'd pay these people actual cash from their own coffers. Then the superseding indictment came back out, added some facts, but it was the same 11 counts. Then on May, SPLC came back down. They moved to dismiss the indictment. They said this is vindictive. They said Trump is launching an all-out civil assault on civil rights groups, and all we're doing is exercising our First Amendment rights. Then the SPLC submitted in the case that they were a target and that they were just fishing for some reason to go after them. Now, the judge gives us a background here and says, all right, I'm going to lay out the factual background that's relevant to this and all of the various pre-indictment statements, and then finally to what the SPLC calls post-indictment media. So SPLC is arguing before they got charged, there was no basis for it, but they were just trying to find a reason. And you can glean that from the fact that the administration was talking negatively against them out in public. And then after they got charged, then the media came out and said, yeah, these people are money launderers and, they belong in jail. So the SPLC also made some other arguments. The judge goes back to this and says, well, this is curious. During Trump's first term, the IRS criminal investigation arm, they went and examined this so-called informant program. They were identifying paid consultants that would infiltrate these white supremacist groups and other extremist groups. And the indictment was spun off from that. So back in 2019, the whole thing kicks off. Now, prosecutors were back then working alongside the FBI, and they were looking at their bank accounts and more, because it's a nonprofit. And the idea is you're not paying Nazis. And by the way, we read the indictment here, both of them, and we saw in there that many of these people, according to the government, were not interested in being in these groups any longer. They were saying, it's time for us to get out. This doesn't work well for my lifestyle. White supremacy is not a lucrative profession. And so I got to go get a real job, right? I've kind of grown out of this part of my life. And the SPLC just continued to fund them. They'd say, stay in there. We'll give you certain amounts of cash every month and pay you a monthly stipend as long as you stay in there. Now, that investigation also, back in 19, looked at any possible tax fraud or other issues, and it involved the informant program. But then, of course, 2020 happened. And what happened is Joe Biden came in, and then they closed it without charges. Oh, because the SPLC is on Team Joe Biden. They're on Team Democrat. So they say, well, Biden closed it. So they did their due diligence. They found that there was no there, closed the investigation, and then it sat dormant for several years. Trump came out and reopened everything. Now, the government doesn't deny. Yeah, no, they closed it. Todd Blanche said that there was an active investigation. Then Biden came in, shut the whole thing down. So I don't know why. We know why. And it was all started again over the past year or so. He said, it was mysteriously closed. They didn't really give a good reason as to why it was closed, says Todd Blanche. And we know why. It's because it was a political favor to this attack arm of the Democratic Party. And again, they seeded the standard across the board. So you type in any group into Google, boom, SPLC pops up, first result that said, this is a hate group, this is an extremist group, and so on. Now, from this sequence of events, the SPLC says that's animosity. That means that they were trying to target us. They wrote, after some activity in 19 and 20, Biden came in and reviewed everything. And they didn't charge us. Then Trump came in and opened it back up. They say they were doing that because the SPLC was criticizing them. They were expressing concern about Pam Bondi, and they were all upset about the J6 pardons, which of course were justified. So in their argument, they say this is vindictive. They say, by the way, Trump has made a bunch of statements. Trump criticizes the left. Before the indictment was issued, Trump denounced what he called, quote, radical left maniacs. Good statement. Who fund, organize, fuel, and perpetrate political violence, which is not a good thing. You're allowed to criticize that. Trump also claimed that the political left comprises bad people, people that want to destroy our country. All true. So the SPLC then also cites various legislator statements. They go back, they talk about Chuck Grassley, James Lankford from Oklahoma, Jim Jordan, Judiciary, Chip Roy. All of them were criticizing the SPLC, and they say, well, that's political pressure. So since all these senators are putting pressure on the FBI, that means it's vindictive. And then those senators contacted the FBI and they say, yeah, there is a there, and you need to investigate. So the judge explains that the tension the SPLC perceives between itself and the administration ramped up after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And after Kirk's shooting, Trump issued a memo. He wrote, countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence, as we saw, allegedly being funded by the SPLC. He directed the National Joint Terrorism Task Force and others to investigate these things, and it was a directive. The SPLC says they didn't name us, but that was us. They responded, they signed an open letter, these letters. We got 100,000 different losers signing this thing, great. Then Cash reported on social media, he said, the FBI, we're done. We're cutting all ties with the SPLC. The SPLC is a partisan smear machine. 100% true. Thank you, Cash. Stating that the FBI would no longer, meaning that they did, Christopher Wray and the others, they would have this leftist organization investigate people, identify the so-called haters, refer them over to the FBI. Here, back during that time, we covered how many different releases from Chris Wray where he would come out and say, oh, we've got a new religiously motivated violent extremist group. And what is it? Pro-lifers, whatever, or, Catholic parents or whatever, pick a group. And they would just target these people because the SPLC would identify them. So then Cash justified the decision to end the relationship with the SPLC. He said this hate map that they've created is literally defaming mainstream Americans, and it's inspiring violence may have caused the assassination attempt on Charlie Kirk. You don't know. Now, a few weeks later, internal FBI records showed that a separate formal investigation was opened. Then the incident summary report that was attached to that investigation focused on the hate map and called it smear tactics and go look into it. So according to the SPLC, this report was generated in direct response to criticism of the hate map. And there were a bunch of groups that were thrown on there, including Liberty Counsel, Turning Point USA is a hate group. Why? Because they don't want men in women's sports. That's transphobic or whatever. It's like literally that basic. They sent a letter to Stephen Miller and they criticized others, the SPLC, as being biased, politicized, and unmoored. Now, the groups did not seek an indictment. They just said, you got to get our data out of your agencies. The SPLC was funneling this bad data into the FBI to weaponize it and prohibit these agencies and block federal funds from contractors who were still engaging with this weaponized operation. So on September 26th, Liberty Counsel spoke with an FBI agent, apparently to discuss their grievances. The employee memorialized the conversation in an email, and he said that he would have his team look at materials that might support the investigation that we discussed. The FBI subsequently opened up a case file. The case file is included here. Now, the report explored the potential consequences of being placed on the hate map, saying they used the hate map as a component as their overall fundraising strategy. It capitalizes on fears, and it creates a sense of urgency for their donors, to entice their donors, where they go to wealthy people and say, give us some cash so that we can go stop this hate that's now percolating across America. Now, this involved, some back and forth, but the SPLC says that all of that, this opening of an investigation, was a clear indication that they were creating a criminal case against us. So we're allowed, in other words, to just speak about who we think is hateful, put them on the internet. It's all free speech, right? And so now if you're criminalizing that, that's an attack on us. The judge is about to obliterate this. Now, after the indictment was unsealed, Trump and other high-ranking officials had a post-indictment media blitz, according to the SPLC. Blanche and Patel, they came out. They had a press conference. They say that Blanche was talking garbage on Fox News. So was Cash. And they cited a bunch of statements about Harmeet Dillon and more. And according to them, Harmeet, shout out, she said that if the SPLC criticized one of her friends, criminal charges were the appropriate response in their framing of this. Then 5 days after the indictment, Trump hopped on 60 Minutes. He called the whole thing a total scam run by the Democrats. Fact check true. In the same vein, the SPLC highlights one of Trump's social media posts. He called it, again, the greatest scam in American history, one of them. Then, in short, the judge fast forwards and says, all of this, letters, FBI, Trump's distaste, they say that's all evidence of vindictiveness, and so we have to dismiss the case against them. She says, hold on a minute. Now, while prosecutors enjoy broad discretion, the government cannot simply punish somebody or indict them for exercising their rights. We have to have actual vindictiveness, and what that means is proving that a prosecutor had a desire and was motivated essentially solely by desire to punish someone for doing something legally. And there could be a presumption of vindictiveness, but if you can't satisfy these standards, and she'll apply it to the facts here in a minute, then you don't win your vindictiveness case. And so she addresses it in three parts. She says, first, the court outlined some background principles according to the Constitution, and let's dive into that. She says the executive branch, obviously, as we know, makes arrests and prosecutes crimes. Congress doesn't do that. The courts don't do that. And prosecutors have broad discretion, but they can't do whatever they want. They've got constitutional restraints, obviously. Now, she also points out nicely that federal judges should also not engage in Monday morning quarterbacking. This would be a good principle for many other judges in various districts to observe. They don't. But in short, the Constitution allows a prosecutor significant discretion to carry out their duties, and only when things are so irregular is that presumption of regularity forfeited. So with all that in mind, she says, let's get into this one. Now, the government attempts to limit the application of vindictiveness. And the government's argument is not that the SPLC faces a heavy burden. That's beyond dispute. They say that this only arises in certain circumstances. But the Supreme Court said it's not as strict of a standard as the government is articulating here. And the court doesn't agree with this expansive view of this. So it's somewhere in between, like the SPLC is saying it's one standard, the government saying we have much broader discretion that is not vindictive. The court says it's really somewhere in between. And the government's, in any event, prosecutorial power and the First Amendment's protection only comes into conflict when somebody's being punished for their speech, which we'll get to. And that's not happening here. It's not just speech. It's the fact that they were laundering money through various bank accounts. So the SPLC says, well, we're entitled to at least a presumption of vindictiveness. And the court says, we disagree, saying presumptions are pretty strong medicine. And you got to be very sufficient in your presentation of evidence to meet that standard. And so that's why the Supreme Court has limited that. And you don't get a presumption here. You're going back and you're just saying it's an executive branch conduct that is a problem, like the opening, closing, reopening of a case, and that for some reason is enough. But that's called discretion. There could be a presumption of vindictiveness, but that's not something that we're seeing here. And even if you argue that it does apply in the pretrial setting, the facts here do not warrant it. As the government notes, investigations are always opened and shut and opened again for a bunch of different reasons. And remember, let's not forget that another judge in Tennessee actually dismissed the prosecution against Kilmer wife beater Abrego Garcia along these same lines. Remember, there was an open investigation, then they closed it, then they opened it again, and the judge said, well, it was already closed, so you can't reopen it. So he apparently didn't get this memo. This judge, of course, is interpreting things appropriately, but other judges will actually use that. They'll rely on this to say, oh, it's closed, you can't reopen it. They investigated it, they found there's nothing wrong, and so you can't reopen it. Clearly, that's ridiculous. Now, indeed, the fact that the closing and reopening of an investigation corresponds to changes in administrations could be attributable to an innocent explanation, just as to an improper investigation. Remember, even Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, would have a memo that he wrote with a memo from Pam Bondi, and they argued that it would be improper to presume vindictiveness where this stuff happens. Now, nor does the fact that the SPLC was indicted after speaking give it a right to a presumption of vindictiveness. Now, it is true that before the indictment, they extensively criticized Trump because they're a leftist operation. But if that were sufficient to warrant a presumption, then the government and their fears would be completely realized and vindicated. That would mean that anybody could effectively immunize itself against prosecution by just talking garbage against the people in charge. You just criticize every prosecutor in the country, and then when they prosecute you, you say, oh, you're only prosecuting me because I criticized you. So that's vindictiveness, and you can't do it. Case dismissed. Every defendant who's in any position of investigation would obviously do that, and the whole justice system would come crashing apart. Now, when evaluating the motion to dismiss, we have to understand that the central figure in any prosecution is the prosecutor. So it's not about Trump. It's not about Todd Blanche. It's not about Kash Patel. So if the motivations of the prosecutor in Alabama is a problem, then that's a problem, but not Chuck Grassley, okay? Not Jim Jordan. But because prosecutors do not operate in a vacuum, we can see whether or not there was undue pressure upon them. So we begin with their least compelling evidence. They came out and they said Chuck Grassley and Lankford and Jordan and Roy were all being mean to us. Their focus on these statements, as we note, notably omits any reference to the actual prosecutor. Oh, so it's not about the prosecutor. And on their own statements made by legislators, that is, statements from outside the executive branch, have little bearing on the prosecutor because, they're in Congress. So while high-ranking Republicans did criticize them, they fail, quote, to connect any vindictive animus to those making the charging decisions. There's no evidence that Grassley or Lankford or Jordan or Roy prompted the prosecution, and all they did was express discontent about this. They sent a letter to the FBI. Grassley and Lankford did not even mention the financial fraud or any other potential victims in the 2025 FBI report. All they did was demand the FBI stop using the SPLC as an investigative source and direct all field offices to not use their products. They would write essentially these memos and these book reports and say, these are bad people. They're going to blow something up. Send that over to the FBI. FBI would open investigations. All being done by third parties. It's like the FBI is not even doing their own work. They would just adopt whatever the SPLC told them to do. All of that being funded by leftist billionaires and more. So separation of powers says we can't really take that into consideration too much. Members of Congress have publicly criticized the SPLC, but without more, that doesn't implicate vindictiveness. And similarly, the fact that Kash Patel cut ties with the SPLC doesn't go to the charging decision here. Once again, the court is focused on the prosecutor and the prosecutor's motives. And discovery can only be demanded when the animus connects and relates back to the prosecutor. Now, as noted above, Kash came out. He said the SPLC is a partisan smear machine. They inspire violence. But Kash's statements are not automatically imputed to the prosecutor. He's the director of the FBI. Now, while his statements were certainly critical of the SPLC, his pre-indictment decision to no longer rely on them doesn't automatically mean vindictiveness. And so you can't rely on that. Now, they did come out and concede that in 2019, the FBI did look into this under Trump 1. The FBI and the IRS began investigating them, and then Biden came in, closed it all down. The SPLC says this is a revival, and that is the attack. They asked the court to infer vindictiveness from that sequence. They say it was open, Biden closed it, so it was illegally open, then lawfully closed, and then once it's closed, you can't reopen it again. And as noted, changes in presidential administrations actually caused this to happen a lot. They even admit that the 2019 investigation and the instant indictment involved the same allegations, the same informant programs, and the same entities, explaining that they do not argue that the DOJ improperly opened 2019, did ya? So the court thus is left to speculate why the probe was closed under Biden. Well, we know why, because they're Democrats. The standard to subject the government to discovery is rigorous, but you can't just interpret that based on speculation. Now, originally, the government says it was fraud. And that description is probable and plausible given the fact that the government interviewed at least 2 former confidential informants for the SPLC, at least 1 former SPLC employee, and got their bank records. And though it took some time, it appears the investigation produced the instant indictment. They've been charged with fraud. Now, the court has no evidence that the original investigation, through its subsequent closing and ultimate reopening, was improper. Even in the superseding indictment, the second set of charges that dropped, the SPLC got hit with violating federal law through 2023 after the original investigation was closed. So prosecutors are not ineluctably bound based on an initial investigation. They can investigate, we had a loose end, couldn't find the outcome. But then we discovered the murder weapon, so now we think this guy did it. The fact that the investigation was closed, again, for unknown reasons, which are, of course, political, thanks to Joe, and subsequently reopened is not improper or not out of the ordinary at all, much less mean it's vindictive. And so in brief, it is plausible that a fraud investigation predicated on conduct that spans more than a decade and extends over multiple years, particularly when there is an intervening change in administrations and allegations of additional criminality, is legitimate. Prosecutors may uncover additional information that suggests a basis for further prosecution when they come to realize, this is what we have. This is especially true in the pretrial posture, where the prosecutor's assessment of the proper extent of prosecution may not have crystallized, and so we don't know why it was closed, but the fact that it was reopened is not vindictive. And similarly, they also had a 2025 report from the FBI. They say that this report, of course, Trump 2 is now in session, in conjunction with another letter that was sent to Mr. Stephen Miller, shout out, as a smoking gun. They say, once this all got underway, then they targeted us. And they note that the report tracks closely with this indictment, but that's not surprising. It's undisputed that the report, writes the judge, was generated in response to a request for an investigation. And in half of the examples that the SPLC identifies, they're included as quotes. The fact that the FBI generated in response to a report and a complaint, the fact that it borrowed some language from the complaint, is not even surprising. That's exactly what you would expect from law enforcement. So the letter to Miller requested that they stop using SPLC data. There is no evidence that the conservative groups targeted by the SPLC pushed for an indictment. They didn't say charge them. They just said stop using their work product. Instead, one group contacted law enforcement with grievances. The FBI documented all of that. Even if the contents of the report were cause for concern, the SPLC must link that report with the prosecutor and the decision to prosecute, and they haven't done that. Now, they tried, but they note that Mr. Davidson personally approved the opening of the investigation into their conduct. Judge writes, well, that seems to be true so far as it goes. The FBI report notes that the FBI case agent got a concurrence from the U.S. attorney in Alabama, Kevin Davidson, to open this. But what does it mean for an attorney to concur in the opening of a matter? And how does that concurrence mean vindictiveness in the decision of whether or not to bring an indictment? Well, guess what? The SPLC cannot say. They cannot explain it. But they do say, we can speculate. They write, at some unknown point, an unknown person must have, did they? Or you kind of inserting your belief, must have come up with this hate map type of attack, and that someone in the DOJ decided to do this. Now, they even write that the SPLC does not know who made the decision or how it was communicated. So again, no evidence at all. So in other words, judge says, the SPLC, all they've shown by actual evidence is that it was indicted a few months after the report was generated. But timing alone and calling it suspicious is insufficient for vindictiveness. You need much more than that. They also make much ado about the fact that the report's penultimate disposition contains the following note, which is, we're going to convert this to a full investigation. But even if it's true that the report was connected in some way to the investigation that ultimately produced the indictment, the extent of that connection is not clear at all. The SPLC is making a bald, citationless assertion that the FBI report led to the indictment, but that's not evidence. Doesn't move the needle at all. And then once they got charged, they say there was animus. Trump came out, Harmeet came out, Todd Blanche came out and was giving interviews that were mean to us. They cite several statements about this, but none of these statements, says the court, are persuasive at all. Court is also similarly unpersuaded by Trump's statements about the SPLC. His rhetoric, she writes in parentheses, rather famously, is pretty wide-ranging, and he is doubtful being critical of the SPLC undoubtedly, but they failed to establish that his animus translated to the prosecutor. So though Trump has specifically criticized them, they have not provided any evidence that the prosecutors were motivated by his statements. And so just the fact that the government, the defendant was a thorn in the government's side, doesn't mean there's a finding of vindictiveness there. Then they talk about Harmeet Dillon. She went on Newsmax, and she made statements during an interview that addressed these charges. But the court is not persuaded by her and her statements. Whatever the animus that Dillon has for the SPLC, she's not the prosecutor. No one has shown that her statements impacted the prosecutor in Alabama. She does civil rights. And the court will not impute her animus to the prosecutor. Go to the prosecutor and explain why he was the one who was biased. So Blanche also asserted that the SPLC paid sources to stoke racial hatred. They literally manufactured the very extremism that they purported to oppose. We have to wonder if any of these groups would even exist, but for the fact that these organizations propped them up and created the financial foundation upon which they can exist. The SPLC takes issue, though, with that statement. They say these were field sources. These were people engaged as informants in the active promotion of racist groups at the same time that they were denouncing these groups on their website. So recounting the allegations contained in the indictment, even slightly editorializing those allegations, is not vindictiveness. So he's, in other words, saying what's in the indictment. He didn't cause the indictment to be created based on what he said. So the objective evidence confirms that Blanche and Davidson only spoke on the allegations within the indictment. After it was unsealed, prosecutors often hold press conferences, very common. This is true specifically in high-profile cases. And at the press conference announcing the indictment, Blanche said, the indictment speaks for itself. I'm not going to talk outside the four corners of the indictment. I'm going to be very careful here. And as you saw in the charging document, they diverted donor money to fund the groups they claim to oppose. That all undermines public trust. They laundered that money through bank accounts and more. So in sum, all of the evidence that the SPLC group has actually identified does not warrant discovery into the government's motives. Okay, they can't go get Blanche's emails and more. They were asking for everything. The court has little trouble concluding that the SPLC offers insufficient objective evidence that the prosecutor was vindictively motivated, nor does the SPLC provide evidence that Davidson was directed to bring these charges. Nobody ordered him to do it. So the SPLC would want us to dismiss this entire case, all based on speculation. In fact, they candidly remarked that one of their main theories, which is the indictment was sent by Stephen Miller groups, is enough, but we cannot license a fishing expedition for this group based on innuendo or speculation. And so it is their burden, the SPLC's burden, not the court's burden, to show that this was improper. They cannot merely provide a rough outline of that theory. The president is out to get us and expect the court to fill in the blanks. If the presumption of regularity means anything, it should at least caution against doing that. And so the question in conclusion before the court is not whether the government should prosecute them. It is a bedrock principle of constitutional law that the decision to prosecute goes to the executive. We have this thing called separation of powers that this judge understands. Many other Biden judges don't. The court is not blind to the fact that this prosecution has generated strong reactions, but as the court has noted, the only question is narrow. Is this an unconstitutionally impermissible criminal charge? Because they have not shown any evidence of this, we deny the SPLC's motion in its entirety and you lose. Now, although the government is entitled to the presumption of regularity, we're not going to turn a blind eye to bad conduct. But here, they haven't identified any. It's all speculation upon conjecture. Nice. Relying upon hypothetical links and assumed change to presume vindictiveness. Once again, that has not been met. But this case, the judge is going to give us a little bit of a talk to, typifies modern American discourse, saying it is unsurprising that the party's arguments primarily comprise what has become all too common ad hominem attacks in the form of press releases, interviews, and social media. Opponents of past, current, and future administrations may full-throatedly protest the decisions made by those in power, but our republic recognizes different venues to vindicate these things. And courts are not the proper forum for your political grievances. And so for that reason, This doctrine of vindictiveness places a heavy burden on the accused. Decades of precedent counsels against applying it here. Two things can be true at once. Critics are not constitutionally immunized solely because they speak against the prosecutor, but missing here is the objective evidence that shows that the Alabama prosecutor was acting vindictively. He was not. And so since the SPLC fails to establish some evidence tending to show animus about discovery, they can't establish any evidence of vindictiveness. The court will not grant the extraordinary relief of dismissing the indictment. And so accordingly, the SPLC's motion to dismiss is hereby denied. Signed here by U.S. District Judge Emily C. Marks in a very nice decision. And of course, here is that judge right here. Well-articulated Emily Marks, walking us through the actual standards. Remember, other judges like in Tennessee, I think Waverly Crenshaw, he analyzed the same thing as it applied to Kilmar wife-beating Abrego Garcia, the guy who is presumably still in the United States, even though he's a non-citizen, and was ordered to be deported. He got charged for trafficking humans through Tennessee. Biden closed it. Didn't do anything with it. Trump reopened it, and that judge says that was vindictive in a shocking decision. But now this standard has been actually applied here, and the Southern Poverty Law Center just lost a big one. This was their desperate attempt to have more access to underlying discovery. They lose. They wanted the entire case dismissed. They lose again, and so major victory for justice in America, and hopefully the prosecution continues with haste. Now, this operation, of course, is just one entity in the Democrat portfolio of other nonprofits that engage in the same type of behavior, probably also have some money laundering going on for them. But the president was out talking about what they will do if they ultimately win. And it's not going to be good if that happens. And so we're happy to see justice is now coming down for these entities, because in large part, we question whether or not the Democratic Party would have as much power as it does, but for all of this cash, all of this capital coming in. They've got the media on their side. They've got billionaires who are funding them with hundreds of millions, ultimately billions of dollars. They've weaponized the courts. They've got all of academia. They've got all of Hollywood. They own the schools. They own the licensing agencies and medical locations and more. And so here's the president explaining they're coming hard, and this is what they're going to do if they win, which is why that cannot happen.
So you have a government funding fight coming up September 30th, which is just, it's 5-6 weeks away, whatever it is. If it doesn't get done now, do you want to push for it in a
Look, I'm going to say whatever happens. It was set up so that it would be before the election, and you could very well have a closed country because the Democrats are going to vote entirely against it. They're going to vote against it.
Well, they're for it. It seems like they're for it. Yeah,
they're in favor of closing down the country. They're in favor of closing. Look, I'll go a step further. I'd like to see a termination of the filibuster.
Well, you don't have the votes for that, right?
Oh, that's one I really can't believe.
Well, why? I mean,
that's even a step.
You say Democrats
will
do it. They tried.
You don't have Democrat votes right now, but if they get in office, 100% they'll terminate the filibuster. You know that.
Well, they tried. They weren't able to last time.
Well, but those two people are now out of service.
That's true.
They're doing other things. They're no longer politicians, and they wouldn't have been able to get elected they couldn't have gotten the nomination. But and look, it's incredible. Termination of the filibuster, so good. And you have most Republicans in favor, and then you have some old line people that they actually believe. Some of the Republicans actually believe the Democrats won't do it. And
I actually don't think that. I think there are a lot more people who are against it than it seems public.
I think the Democrats will do it in the first hour, day, and if they're really slow, week, it'll be done. And then you know what happens? You have 2 more states, so to speak, right? You have D.C. and you have Puerto Rico. You have 4 more senators. You have 8 more congressmen. You have 23 because the real number they want is 23 Supreme Court justices. That's their real number.
And that's the president explaining that if they do get power, we're in big trouble. And of course, they've been building these institutions for years. The Southern Poverty Law Center is just one among many, and they've got a lot of heft and energy behind them So we need to keep our eye on exactly who's behind them, what they're doing, and continue to expose it, because they hide in the shadows behind closed doors. They say one thing in public, they do something else, and of course are, according to the indictment, funding the very people that they claim to be opposing in order to further their political narrative. Create the reports, send them to the FBI. FBI validates it as though it's legitimate, and then actually prosecutes people who are opposed to them. It's been happening for generations now, but now we've got criminal charges and a judge who's actually measuring the law appropriately against the allegations brought by the DOJ. So we're going to keep our eye on this one. Hopefully see the prosecution continue to accelerate. Thank you for joining, liking this video as we do. All right, we've got more good updates on the day, and another big one came down in the Fauci case, and we've been waiting for these documents to get released, and now they are out. Fauci's legacy continues to come crumbling down. The so-called doctor and the COVID fraudsters have now been caught saying one thing in public and believing another thing behind closed doors. First, we had his personal diary. Then he said he would testify to Congress anytime, anywhere, and explain everything until he pled the fifth 111 times. And now we've got the text messages. Fauci's phone has been seized by Congress, and Ron Johnson is delivering the goods. We can see exactly what is inside. And he shared with us a post walking us through one of the main highlights here. We're, of course, going to take a look at the rest of the text messages all seen inside and see what these two were talking about, actually multiple people, how they were communicating when nobody was watching. But the truth, of course, is very different than what they were saying to the media. Now, Ron Johnson, the guy who got his hands on this, said that Fauci was concerned in January 2021 that the second dose of the jab, quote, theoretically could be associated with miscarriage in the first trimester, which is a curious thing because we remember them saying the opposite. Rand Paul and Ron Johnson released the text between Fauci, Rochelle Walensky, and Vivek Murthy below. While I've been conducting oversight for years, says Ron, now that we have the documents in Fauci's government issue phone, my investigation has only just begun. And so Fauci can hide behind his pardon. He can pretend like he is, America's scientist, and like his legacy will live on. And at one point, he'll have a big statue out in Washington, D.C. somewhere. But the fact is, every little bit of new evidence that comes out continues to shatter that facade, and it's slowly crumbling away. And we'll take a look at the text messages, but I wanted to set the baseline on this because Rochelle Walensky had an actual quote about this, and Ron Johnson shared this as well. Remember, this is what they were saying. Despite privately texting Fauci about their concerns about the COVID jabs for pregnant women, Rochelle told the public in April 2021, there's no problem here at all. You've got a baby in the womb? No problem. Go take this thing, take 2 of them, take 3 of them, get your boosters and more.
Importantly, no safety concerns were observed for people vaccinated in the 3rd trimester or safety concerns for their babies. As such, CDC recommends that pregnant people receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Importantly,
get it. Just go get your pharma product. No problems with it at all. But the truth is, Ron Johnson says it was not that simple. They knew that there were problems. They were communicating it internally. And here's Ron Johnson explaining.
We obviously have his phone. We've downloaded it. And we're going to carefully go through this to protect people's personal information. But I thought we had to release this right away because this is, I think, major news. Anthony Fauci, in a text exchange with Vivek Murthy and Rochelle Walensky, the CDC director, they're talking about the COVID injection and having pregnant women take it. And in the middle of that text exchange, I think the key text is where Anthony Fauci is talking about the fact that the second dose creates a greater cytokine storm, additional information that could have an impact on increased miscarriages in the first trimester.
And it's interesting to hear Ron Johnson say pregnant women, but to hear Rochelle Walensky say pregnant people. And when Rochelle is talking about this, you can very clearly see she's reading from a screen right there, okay? Doesn't even believe it. She's like, what did Fauci tell me to say? And we got to listen to this lady all the time, just simply sitting there reading from her little notes and her script as she just regurgitated the talking points from Lord knows who over to the American public repeatedly. So pregnant people, including, I guess, dudes that have babies, according to their biology, these are the doctors and the scientists, you can't even figure that one out, also can't articulate it from the top of their head because they're just reading the talking points passed on to them. So the text messages has been released, and Ron Johnson also gave us a little bit of a summary here on what's inside the text messages, saying today from Ron Johnson's website, the chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations and Homeland released just one of the text chain messages obtained from Fauci's government-issued cell phone, which was produced back on August 5th. And the phone, we just got one chain, okay? There is a mother load in here, contains more than 34,000 text messages, woo, and 522 voicemails. I can't believe this dude didn't delete this thing. Or like Robert Mueller's special counsel staff entered the password in 1 million times until the phone deleted itself. Or like Hillary Clinton's people did, take the phones and smash them with a hammer. Oddly, only 3 contacts are listed because he probably deleted them. All other text messages are identified only with phone numbers rather than contact names. Yeah, it is too early to determine whether any data has been deleted, but I would guess the answer is yes, because in other emails, we saw David Morins was being prosecuted. He's now been charged for his financial crimes. He got fat and rich off of COVID like many did. He and others were saying, we need to take this offline, okay? And we need to bypass FOIA by misspelling words. And we need to essentially cover up for what we're doing because we're criminals. So to protect the privacy of individuals with whom Fauci communicated, as well as personal messages unrelated to issues he was in, it's going to take time to carefully review the large volume of info. Johnson, Paul, and their staffs are working diligently to cooperatively to release this information. But today, this text chain could have an immediate impact on public health. People are still running out there getting the jabs, okay? No idea why, but they're like, I don't want to die of COVID. You still see people in their cars driving around with their masks on. So booster after booster, he's like, listen, if you're pregnant, they were communicating this was a problem. The text chain here that we're going to read is between Anthony Fauci, Rochelle Walensky, the lady who just was reading from the teleprompter, and Vivek Murthy, dated from January 25, 26 through 2021. In the chain, they discuss pregnant women and COVID and relate that date back, okay? This video from Rochelle, according to Ron Johnson, was on April 23rd, 2021. You see that? Meaning that they were sending these messages before she went out and said, it's safe and effective. Just go take it. And we remember 100% effective. Get it? You're not going to catch COVID. Then all of a sudden, people I knew went and got it. And they're like, I got COVID like the day after. I got COVID the week after I got the shot. I'm like, well, that's a problem, isn't it? And they said, well, I don't know what happened. Weird coincidence, many of them. Others realized what had been happening. But she, after was sending these text messages, came back out and said those things. They discussed pregnant women and COVID. Now, additional text messages can be seen here. We've got the full summary of exactly what's going on right here. We'll come back to that and see if we miss anything that are in the actual text messages themselves. But here's what has now been released. And so this looks like it may have been a group chat. So 125, 126, we got Rochelle Walensky, CDC director, Vivek Murthy, and Anthony Fauci all in here. So Murthy sends a message to Fauci, and this is at about 4:42 p.m. in an afternoon close of day text. Hi, Tony and Rochelle. I hope you're both doing well. For pregnant women considering getting the jab, are you aware of any data or theoretical reason why jabbing early versus late in the pregnancy would be preferred? How quickly can we pump these ladies up? And any sense of when there will be more robust data on the vaccine risk in pregnant women? I've been telling pregnant women that there hasn't been evidence of concerning adverse outcomes in the trials, though the number of pregnant subjects was likely to have been limited. So he's saying something that he doesn't really have evidence for because he realizes the sample size is too small. Great. Scientist. So I figure we have many who are in the healthcare workforce who are getting jabbed, so presume we'll be tracking outcomes. Thanks. which is crazy. We don't have any data. We don't have any evidence. So we're just going to pump everybody up with this thing, and then we'll have our test data. Then we'll have our results, and we'll know what the outcome is. It's evidence of a full-blown testing operation in order to gather the evidence before they had it, while Rochelle comes out and says it's fine. So Walensky responds from the CDC. She says, "Hi, Vivek. My understanding is that this is all a data-free. CDC has implemented a pregnancy registry for FL of pregnant women. Women who report they are pregnant in VSafe have the opportunity to enroll with FL 1 year after the dose through their pregnancy. For live birth infants, we'll have a follow-up at 3 months. To date, over 15,000 pregnant women are enrolled in VSafe." So we're testing people. Okay, we don't really know, but we're testing people. We'll have some more updates soon. So again, it's not even 3 months out, right? We'll have 3 months, we'll have a follow-up, then we'll have 1 year. Jabs just started to roll out. Remember, we had Operation Warp Speed. Trump comes out. They, in our read, delayed the jabs until after the election because they definitely did not want Trump to have a win. In the final days of the election, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were like, "I'm not taking Trump's shot. Are you crazy?" We had the death counter scoreboard, million dead, 1,000,001 dead, blah, 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 every day. And then all of a sudden, Joe Biden wins the election. And next thing we know, Joe Biden's got, he's like a pincushion getting jabbed up all over the place. All of a sudden, then Kamala Harris is like, "I love it. It's not the Trump shot anymore. It's the Kamala shot." And then they took credit for this thing and rolled it out. So brand new. Vaccine is brand spanking new. Fauci comes out. He says, "Agree with Rochelle. There are no data or theoretical reason to believe that jabbing early versus later would be preferred. Yet some people," and he knows this already, that we're fresh out of the oven, "even female healthcare professionals feel concerned about injecting a, quote, genetic vaccine very early in pregnancy." Good call. "There is a misperception out there that we need to deal with that. mRNA can somehow, quote, get into your genes." Because it can? "When the misperception gets extended to an early developing fetus, the anxiety heightens." He sent that back just a few minutes later. So 4:48:35, he sends it back 4:56. Then another one, a follow-up at 6:45. So Fauci needs to think about this for a little bit. He said, "I've asked around a bit more, maybe text some other people, and another issue came up that you need to be aware of. Oh, since many people have significant cytokines storm and fever after the second dose, this theoretically could be associated with miscarriage in the first trimester." Oh, really? Theoretically? So where'd that data come from? Maybe that would have been a good question to ask him at the congressional hearing before he invoked his fifth 111 times. So again, he says, yeah, maybe you're going to miscarry. Maybe you take this thing, you lose your baby. People trying to get pregnant, for how long? All of a sudden, your kid's dead because COVID shots did it. And Fauci has an indication that that's happening. Didn't communicate that at all. They've got no data, but just keep jabbing. Okay. So then we've got Walensky. Rochelle comes back. She says, "Oh, definitely a good point, especially after dose 2. Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe these kids are all going to get killed." Okay, yeah, good point. What did she say a couple months later in April? Nothing about it. Said it's perfectly safe. Go get it. So then it continues. We've got now at 8:21. Murthy responds to both of them. Fauci says, "Good point." So does she. Now, this is really helpful. Thanks. She says, "I've been hearing the concern about the mRNA causing mutations in the developing fetus as well. And that's a really good point. Read the cytokine storm post second dose." So now we've got 3 so-called doctors out there who are all in agreement that, oh yeah, maybe this can kill a first trimester fetus, a baby in there. And they didn't tell anybody about it. He also says, okay, Tony, Rochelle, this is the next day, 4:33 p.m., same kind of evening post day text message thread. "Hi, Tony, Rochelle, did you see this announcement today from WHO saying they advise against pregnant women taking the Moderna vaccine because lack of data," which would be the reasonable take here? I mean, you can try it if you want it. We got no data about its efficacy one way or the other. Its safety, we don't know. He said, okay, World Health came back down, and this has led to a flurry of questions. What is your take? I imagine we will all get asked about this, so what do we say? We have to sync up our response. He then shares the actual article. WHO.int slash news feature, the Moderna COVID mRNA vaccine, what you need to know, might kill your baby. Oh, all right. Sends that over to Fauci. Fauci responds. He says, here's what the response should be. I would say that in any vaccine in which data are lacking in pregnant women, one must weigh the potential risks against the benefits. COVID can be a serious disease, especially in pregnancy. In the vaccine trials, pregnant women were not allowed, but following the EUA, the emergency use authorization for this new experimental product, a large number, more than 10,000 pregnant women have been vaccinated. No issues have arisen. No, zero. The FDA and the ACIP and the ACOG are all permissive for pregnant women to have a choice. Animal tox studies did not raise any red flags, which is interesting because yesterday he said that, interesting, many people have cytokine storms, and there's another issue that came up, and we don't know really how or why this came up. Did somebody lose a baby and they discovered that? And now he says, it's okay, it's permissive. Okay, rather than saying our response should include, there could be a cytokine storm after the second dose that kills your child, he says it's permissive. You take it or leave it. It's up to you. One must weigh the risks against the benefit. And remember, they were also minimizing any other potential protection mechanisms like natural immunity. Did you already get COVID while you're pregnant or before you were pregnant, then you got pregnant? Maybe you don't need the jab, okay, because you've got natural immunity, so you're good. But they didn't even bring that up, okay? Just take it or leave it. Animal tox studies are great, and no issues have arisen, period. Then he responds from Murthy. Well, that's what my sense was as well, Tony, which is why I was surprised to see the WHO put out a strong statement like that, saying they do not recommend Moderna in pregnant women. That's a strong statement to make and potentially quite damaging to public confidence among pregnant women. That's the point, yeah. If the evidence leads you to lack confidence, then your lack of confidence is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, unless you're trying to shill jabs and to just get everybody doped up on this product. So Walensky says, agreed. Sorry, was driving and missed this. ACIP meeting tomorrow. Shall I flag it for them? And that's what we've got right there in just that short thread. So they knew that this thing was not good. They engineered not only the virus, but then came back around and engineered a response. World Health Organization got it right. They didn't like that at all. So they came up with this little talking point and they said, it's serious. And so you might die either way. So take the jab and then you won't die of COVID, but you might kill your kid, or don't take it and die. So take it, you'll live, kid might die, or don't take it, you'll die, and your kid will die anyways. So just go get the jab because we need those stock numbers to go up and to the right. So all that just got released. The whole thing is just sick. And there was even more. So additional texts. Let me see if this is the same release. Now, other documents that they apparently will be releasing, what we just read was just from 2 days, but they've got some other days here that they've already articulated for us. And they say on February 3rd, so a couple days later, NIAID director said to Anthony Fauci, quote, FDA have found thus far, and we have to be careful, but thus no red flags about pregnant women. So these are public stories. This one came over on YouTube. One director, in other words, was contradicting what they were saying before. Then in August, another CDC person called Sasha, she said, we are not seeing a signal of safety concerns in pregnancy. The jab can prevent COVID. Spoiler alert, it didn't. And so that's the primary benefit. Okay, so their text, again, contradicting each one of these other statements. August 30th, Fauci said, questioning quotes, well, are the vaccines safe? Tens and tens and tens of thousands of women who have been followed by the CDC, who have been jabbed when they were pregnant. There's no indication whatsoever that there's any increase of any adverse issues in pregnant women who were jabbed compared to pregnant women who weren't jabbed. It's pretty clear that pregnant women should get jabbed, from Fauci. Rochelle, again, September, months later, saying CDC strongly recommends COVID jabs either before or during pregnancy because the benefits outweigh the risks. They said in a health alert, and that jabs are safe for pregnant women, but not mentioning the cytokine storms. So also, Feb 1, Murthy said that it's all more important for you to get jabbed if you're pregnant or if you're trying to become pregnant. Go get this thing. The data points show that the jabs are safe. This is so insane. The data points show, he said that, that's a year later, so 2022. that jabs are safe during these various stages before and during the pregnancy. They found generally that any time during your pregnancy is actually fine. That's why the recommendation is to just get it. Stop thinking, just go get it. Then in January 22, another OBGYN published an open letter and had a following critique. He said that because 700 of 827 pregnant women in the study got their jab in the third trimester, those 700 should be excluded from the denominator used to calculate a 12% spontaneous abortion rate. Wild. Defined as occurring before 20 weeks. The actual spontaneous abortion rate would then be 82%. Do you see these numbers here? So take the numbers that are bad from you and exclude them, and then your numbers will go from 82% down to 12.6%, and that might be more along the lines of a normal response. Sick people who were out here with basically no data, and this guy was responding to this here in this document. It's difficult to conceive. This is the last comment. James A. Thorpe, he said, it's difficult to conceive of a more egregious breach of medical ethics than what the medical industrial complex did related to COVID for pregnant women. The campaign was not accidental. It was calculated and targeted. Why? Women are the primary decision makers in healthcare across human lifespan. So you got to get the pregnant women on board. And pregnant women are the most vulnerable. So this campaign was never grounded in biological science. It was about behavior, manipulating public perception. All of this being outsourced to NGOs, emotionally disseminated, charged with misleading messages to get people to comply. People trust their doctors. And the deception was institutionalized. There was a study, the Shimabukuro study, that came out, published April 21, 2021, right after the jab came live. The authors claimed a miscarriage rate of 12.6%, but the raw data revealed an 82% miscarriage rate in women jabbed in the first trimester, like almost 100. This is consistent with the 81% miscarriage rate noted in the Pfizer study. These figures mirror the effects of chemical abortion drugs, for crying out loud. Both of these publications were riddled with conflicts of interest and deliberate misrepresentations intended to coerce pregnant women into taking the jab. Study only covered 10 weeks, even though pregnancy lasts 40 weeks. Study should have been conducted over a full year, but there were rising rates of jab hesitancy, and they needed to stop that. They relied on a voluntary data collection database called vSafe. In hindsight, the article appears to be unreliable considering certain revelations. The whole goal was promoting the jab. Investigators also appear to have uncovered a potential money laundering scheme, funneling funds through Massachusetts Department of Health to the Massachusetts Medical Society. They got awarded a $67 million contract, which is why so many people were invested in just killing everybody. They didn't care. They were getting rich. In the study, the Shimabukuro study, all 21 officers were federal employees. All of them had an interest in promoting the jabs. One guy been with the FDA since 2010. These are serious conflicts of interest. And of the named 21 authors, 8 were physicians. There were 3 OBGYN specialists. It's inconceivable that this error rate would have escaped the scrutiny of them. But they didn't care. They published it anyways. At least 6 studies demonstrate breaches of safety signals about the jab during the pregnancy months. Of these, 3 came from CDC, FDA, VAERS, 2 conducted by Pfizer. And the published findings led to, if you challenge them, censorship, persecution, medical licenses stripped away, board certifications removed. And here again is the data. There was a miscarriage rate of 81%, 26 out of 32 cases. 5-fold increase in stillbirth rates from 5.8 per 1,000 to 31 per 1,000. 8-fold increase in neonatal death rates from 3.9 per 1,000 to 31 per 1,000. 13% incidence of breastfeeding complications. Oh my gosh. The American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology also put on notice about unacceptable breaches in this thing. Many people penning open letters. And the findings validate warnings issued more than 3 years earlier. In January 2022, they knew. They knew that the lipid nanoparticles were intentionally designed to cross the placenta and enter fetal circulation. Recent findings also indicate substantial contamination and degradation of the jabs. In the Pfizer product, the contamination includes a bunch of technical stuff and another cancer-promoting genetic sequence, perfect, turbo cancer. And all of the results are just horrific, okay? Menstrual abnormalities, miscarriage, fetal malformation, preeclampsia, preterm delivery, low amniotic fluid, and more. Study after study here, all showing you APGAR scores going much down significantly. Jaundice, congenital malformations, 220% increase in atrial septal defects, hearts all jacked up, 200% increase in other congenital anomalies, 310% increase in developmental delays. Question, how many women would have agreed to receive this during their pregnancy if they fully knew about these 8 outcomes from Pfizer's own studies? Seems unlikely that many would have consented, particularly if given honest, transparent information that is required under the Nuremberg Code of Ethics. Yeah. But they didn't care. They needed to shill the jabs, and the data just continues on. All referenced here. In conclusion, there must be an immediate moratorium on this. This product is not safe, let alone the most vulnerable patients for pregnant women, preborn and newborns. But they didn't care, man. They knew it, and you could see it in their text messages. And what's also revealing in the text messages is that they're kind of at this early stage acknowledging that they don't know. We don't really have any data on it. Why and what is happening? Any sense of when there will be more robust data? I've been telling them that there hasn't been evidence, which means that there is no evidence, right? An absence of evidence equates to evidence of absence. No, it doesn't. Thanks, Vivek. These people, man, all belong in jail. So hopefully that happens soon. Here was at least a good update from the president saying, we're going to fix this problem where kids are getting jabbed up with a million different shots everywhere we look, and signing this new standard from inside the Oval Office today.
For long and far too long period of time, America's recommended more childhood vaccines than any peer nation, and even twice as many doses as some European countries, and even more than that. In many cases, we were requiring 72 jabs for our beautiful, healthy, lovely, delicate little children, including giving the hepatitis B shot to infants and newborns on top of many other vaccinations. The hepatitis B shouldn't be given until they're 14 or 15 years old. They were given early. Effective immediately, my administration is recognizing gold standard childhood vaccine recommendations for only 11 core vaccinations against the most serious and dangerous diseases, along with the MMR, which hopefully will be split up. You have the MMR. We want it in 3 separate vaccinations given at separate times. Together, there could be a possibility they're quite lethal, and separately, it looks like they are not at all lethal, but just very effective. So the MMR, we want to have separate visits, separate times. The vaccine being broken into 3 separate single doses, and vaccines being administered in separate visits. For example, at 1 year, you should have 5 separate visits for vaccines rather than getting them all in the same day. And I saw this early on, and I've seen proof of it, where they have a vaccination thing, looks like the size of a bottle of soda, poured into a little child's body. And bad things happen in too many cases, because this is an explosion, this is an epidemic. So at year 1, you should have 5 separate visits for vaccines rather than giving them all in the same day. Very importantly, vaccinations for hepatitis B, COVID-19, and influenza, among others, are no longer recommended for all children. In addition, this executive order directs the Attorney General to advance legal challenges against states that violate children's rights to religious or medical vaccination exemptions for the exemptions.
This is going to be very interesting because there are a lot of levers of society that are used to cajole people into go getting their kids jabbed. You want to send your kid to school, you got to give them all these shots. It's become mandatory. You want to send your kid to daycare or go to a sports program or whatever, all of them have to be actually administered to your kid before they can be allowed in on the premises. And so if the administration will now go and target these states, saying that maybe there are appropriate religious justifications to not getting that done or other civil rights reasons as to why a parent may not want to do that, and a state refuses, maybe we'll have some actual reform. The DOJ can unleash civil lawsuits and we can start to reform the medical industrial complex that is filled with guys like Fauci and Rochelle and Murthy, many of whom knew exactly what was going on, but they didn't care. They were all on team science, so-called, and their main priority was to get that product into your body. And we all lived through it. We saw what happened to our liberties, our society, to our loved ones as we were subjected to their abuse for years. And now we want justice. We want accountability for this. And the so-called scientists won't even answer questions about it. So we're going to keep our eye on this, of course. I fully expect a whole slew of new text messages to come from Ron Johnson. We're going to go through them in fine detail until justice is done. And so thank you for joining us as we keep our eye on this one, for subscribing, for liking this video. And of course, we'll be back when those new text messages drop. And we might have voicemails too, so that'll be good as well. Now, changing gears a little bit, we've got a whole slew of lawsuits that have now been filed across the nation, and they're adding up. We know Democrats for a long time have valued non-citizens over actual citizens. It's basically the entire point of their entire party. And now we've got the DOJ striking back. We've seen other lawsuits in various places that go after the colleges. We know that we're already paying for free housing, free healthcare, free food. The list goes on, even subsidizing births for non-citizens who come into the nation. But we're also paying, in many ways, for their colleges. And now, not happening anymore. Not if the DOJ has their way. And we're now up to, on this fight, 17 lawsuits challenging this concept of in-state tuition for illegal aliens. If you want to go to college and you're an out-of-state resident, you come into the state to go to this school, you pay full price. Sometimes it's, $50,000 a year. But all you got to do if you're a non-citizen, just walk across the border, go plop down in that state, and you get the discounted rate that's subsidized by your other citizens who are not even your colleagues. They're actual citizens and you're not, and also subsidized by the federal government. But now the DOJ is suing across the board, and they've won a lot of these, which is why I think they're so gung-ho to get this ensconced across the entire nation, because these schools, these cities, and these blue sanctuary states are all in violation of federal law. And they announced today that even more have dropped against New York, Connecticut, and Vermont, which brings the total up to 17. And Woodward, Stanley, who's over at the DOJ, he said, Congress long ago made pretty clear states cannot put illegal aliens over our nation's own citizens. Makes sense. By granting illegal aliens in-state tuition and a bunch of other things, New York, Vermont, Connecticut are doing exactly that. And so no more. As of today, we have now sued every state in the Second Circuit that seeks to thwart Congress's clear prohibition by placing aliens over citizens. They get America premium version. And our efforts will not cease until Trump's promise is fulfilled. Illegal aliens will not receive benefits denied to our nation's own citizens. 17 now in total have been filed. And you can see the prior states, many of them we've covered here, have already emerged victoriously. We've seen in Texas, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Illinois, favorable orders saying that in-state tuition for illegals is not valid. Even the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals also found the same. Lawsuits against other states are underway right now actively. We've got Minnesota, Virginia, California, New Jersey, Kansas, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maryland, and Colorado that are active, and the new ones just dropped against New York, Connecticut, and Vermont. And let's take a look at what is happening inside. You can see not super long lawsuits because the law is pretty clear, but this one says, all right, listen, happening out of Connecticut. United States of America versus the sanctuary politicians, in this case, Higher Education Commissioner, called Timothy Larson and the Board of Trustees out there at the University of Connecticut. They say, guys, did you realize, we know you did, that federal law prohibits illegal aliens from being eligible to receive post-secondary education benefits if those same benefits are denied to citizens, okay? If you're not going to give them to somebody from Texas in Connecticut or Arizona or California or anywhere, then you can't give them to non-citizens. There are no exceptions, period. But Connecticut has ignored this for over a decade. In fact, in 2011, they passed a law that extends eligibility for in-state tuition benefits to literal illegal aliens there. But other citizens, you want to travel there and go to college there at a nice university there, you pay full price, punk. Another Connecticut law offers entitlement to institutional financial aid for illegal aliens, so they get cheaper student tuition and they get actual scholarships in Connecticut who meet certain eligibility criteria, and you don't get that, okay? You want to come over there from Alabama, you're paying full price, you citizen. We don't want you. But another Connecticut law also exists. They provide funding from the anticipated regional tuition revenue from the community college for tuition waivers. We'll just waive your tuition. Tuition remissions. We'll give you grants for your books and everything. We'll give you student employment for residents attending. Even illegal aliens, all not available to non-citizens. And another one, it also rewards illegal aliens in Connecticut with eligibility for the Roberta B. Willis need-based grant, but U.S. citizens don't get it. So free money for illegals. Now, finally, even another one. How many laws? It makes illegal aliens who meet a certain threshold of residency and who are there for at least 5 years eligible for student loan reimbursement payments, and citizens don't get it at all. So free, like free college if you're an illegal. Why? All in the name of what? Diversity or something? They don't want you from your outside state, but they want somebody from a foreign land. So these statutes are blatant unequal treatment favoring illegal aliens over citizens. And worse, such preferential treatment is squarely prohibited. Federal law mandates it's not allowed. An alien who is not lawfully present in the U.S. shall not, the law says, be eligible on the basis of residence for any benefit unless another citizen or national of the U.S. is also eligible for that benefit. And so accordingly, we're suing you. Supremacy clause is valid, and your laws, all of them, all 5 of them, are illegal, and they must yield to federal law. So courts have long recognized this, saying this preempts your state laws. It's been very clear. We just got another holding in the Fifth Circuit in 2023, saying that when U.S. citizens can't receive the same, doesn't matter what a state says. If the state does something that did not make citizens eligible, then guess what? Illegals can't be eligible either. You want to make everybody eligible? Okay, you can give it to illegals, but not a priority for the non-citizens. Now, numerous courts have struck down similar in-state laws as unconstitutional, and we've been winning a bunch of these. U.S. versus Illinois, saying Illinois state in-state tuition statutes are preempted by federal law. Nebraska came out in June 26, saying Nebraska, you lose. They were allowing non-citizens to get benefits that other citizens couldn't get. Another one, August 25th, out of Oklahoma, same thing. Illegal, violates the supremacy clause. And the big one that we covered here out of Texas, and that went up to the Fifth Circuit. Fifth Circuit validated it as well. So since you're losing across the entire nation, you're going to lose here. All you need to do is stop this, rescind those laws, or don't, because we're going to come and get a court order saying they're invalid. Here, what's happening is the U.S. government, the DOJ, is now suing, and the defendant is Connecticut. We're also suing the Higher Education Board of Trustees and more. And federal law says Congress sets the rules of naturalization. Constitution says the president must take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and that the federal government has preemptive and preeminent authority in immigration matters. We've articulated that through case law for hundreds of years. Now, the right to do so doesn't just come from legislative power, but it is in the dealing with foreign affairs of the nation, and the president has a role in that. So based on all these enumerated powers, the government at the federal level has the right to pass these laws. We've done that. Congress did it. They declared that aliens within a nation's border should not depend on public resources to meet their needs. That would be nice, but they do. They get free everything. We have talked about this for years now. We saw the videos during Biden's term where they were giving them hotel rooms in New York and paying for it, including their maids. and food and medical care for their newborn anchor babies and more. Congress also emphasized the availability of public benefits should not be an incentive for immigration. And Congress said, you need to remove the incentives. And so accordingly, a state may not do this. You may not offer in-state tuition or any other benefits based on the fact that they're non-citizens if you're denying those to Americans. The law says clearly, an alien under U.S. Code 1623A, says if you're not lawfully present, you're not eligible on the basis of residence for any benefit unless a citizen is also eligible for the benefit. Period. Simple as right there. In February 2025, Trump issued an executive order making sure that we're going to enforce this, saying we're going to take appropriate action to stop the enforcement of these local laws. And that's what we're doing now. You guys in Connecticut and Vermont and New York and Minnesota and everywhere, you've created a system where you are giving benefits to non-citizens. You've got a bunch of these colleges, University, Western Connecticut, Community College, Charter Oak State College, and more. And you charge separate rates. You've got a resident rate and a non-resident tuition rate. And it's expensive. Look at this. You see, residents get $7,000 yearly fees, non-residents $21,000, okay? So 3 times as much. You live out of state. Unless you're a legal alien, then you get the discounted rate. Similarly, $192 per credit hour for residents, $578 per credit hour for non-residents. Huge numbers across the board. But you guys now reward illegal aliens. You give them the discounted rate. And that's actually in your law. Section 29-9 unequivocally makes illegal aliens eligible for all of this. You say it specifically in here. If you reside, that's it. Persons without lawful immigration status, you must also file an affidavit and state that you have filed to become legal or will file an application as soon as you're eligible. Okay, so don't even have to be in the process of becoming legal. I will. I'll get to it. Okay, good enough. So all of it is adverse to actual Americans. They also explain how they get financial aid. Acts assisting students without legal immigration status. They have an actual bill. They passed it into law. An act assisting students without legal immigration status with the cost of college. Crazy. What are these people in Connecticut doing? They're like paying for this. Like, where does the money come from? They pay for it. Connecticut law does not have a comparable requirement that public higher education institutions make Connecticut financial aid available to citizens. No, because the bill is literally for people without legal immigration status, like actually paying for them. Why? It's like, suicidal. But all of it is articulated here on how it works. They also mandate that tuition set aside for financial aid shall be used for residents. Doesn't mean citizen residents, just even resident can be anybody, of course, the non-citizens. And they go through all 5 of the various laws, also rewarding them with state-funded, need-based scholarships. So they get their education for free. Well, you got to pay for it. Roberta B. Willis Scholarship, they're eligible for it. And no one else is. So it's good to be on America Premium version if you're a non-citizen. They also will reimburse your student loans. If you're qualifying, it comes on a first come, first serve basis. They'll reimburse up to $5,000 a year. And no reimbursement claims for anybody living outside of Connecticut. So, man, it's good to be an illegal in Connecticut or any one of these blue states. So now we're suing you, and we're going to win. All of these laws, all 5 of them, are preempted by, it's called the Supremacy Clause. Have you heard of it? Yeah. We're also going to say that this goes to your financial aid. Okay, so they're just going to apply this to each one of these. This other section here, financial aid, another preemption of this law. All 5 that we just went through, count 5, the loan reimbursement claim. And so accordingly, we're saying all of these laws on the books violate the Supremacy Clause. They're giving illegal aliens and residents who are not citizens there benefits that citizens are not getting. So we want you to issue an injunction that prohibits them and everybody across the board from this. Make sure you award us fees as well and costs as a result of bringing this action. Sign here, by Luke Miller, trial attorney at the U.S. DOJ Civil Division. And this is happening just across the board, right? So now we're up to 17 states, I think was what the actual order said here, or the actual post. 17 lawsuits across the board. It's happening all across the nation. And you start to ask yourself, why do we have so many illegal aliens here? Well, this is why. They get a better deal than you do. It's great. You just come on in here. Everything's paid for, and they get free education and free housing. So we've got Stephen Miller here who is explaining that we actually don't want this to happen anymore. We don't need to import a bunch of people from around the world. We'd rather just give actual tuition benefits to Americans. And you know how they always say, we need these people because there's no jobs. There's no Americans who want to go do these jobs and work for this skill set and be able to, do this, that, or the other thing. When it's curious because they're not actually really incentivizing people to go to college. And when they go to college, they come out with an English poetry degree or something. And so since everybody's got English poetry degrees that are essentially useless, shout out to all our English majors out there, we also then need to import other people who have the actual skill sets. Rather than having our colleges turn people into little communists, why don't we actually incentivize them to care about Americans and to teach them useful skill sets rather than the underwater basket weaving degree, and allow them to excel in America? And if we can do that and kind of refine our own home team, then we don't need to import everybody from around the world. Here's Stephen Miller explaining what we need to do.
Where does it lead? I mean, the answer is look at the countries around the world that have the system of government that Democrats want. It leads to Haiti. It leads to Somalia. It leads to a failed third world state. Look what Democrats have done in the cities they control right now. I grew up in Los Angeles. It went from a gleaming paradise of prosperity, opportunity, a flourishing middle class, to open drug dens, parks you can't take your kids to, your children can't walk home from school, you're going to get mugged and beaten up outside the place where you work, miles and miles and miles of unremediated slums. That's what they did to Los Angeles. Look what they've done to Chicago. Look what they've done and are doing now to New York City. You don't have to use your imagination. You mentioned abolish prisons. That is part of their platform. Right now, the Democrat Party, the DSA, they want to abolish prisons. Think about what that means. Rapists, murderers, child predators set free to offend and reoffend again. That's how you end up with these horrifying tragedies like we've seen in Charlotte with Arena, where you have repeat offenders set free over and over again. This is not imaginary. It's not hypothetical. It's what's happening in Democrat-controlled territory right now. And here's the other thing, Laura, to keep in mind. There is going to be one group of people they will put in jail. They will put in jail their political opposition. Yep. Good communists and good socialists. They don't want police officers to put hardened criminals in jail. They want police and law enforcement to exist only for putting their political opposition in jail.
Or the police.
That's the very real hell. The very real hell that we're facing.
He's exactly right about that. The criminal element of the invading class that they have created in our country will be very useful to them, because as things get worse, then it validates their solution. They say, oh, see, capitalism's terrible. Oh, see, democracy, the republic is all bad. We got to get rid of the Senate. We got to pack the Supreme Court. We got to get rid of the cops. Our current criminal justice system is not solving these problems that we created. So therefore, elect us and we'll bring in a better solution, which will be a complete and total overhaul and overthrow of the current system. It's just communism 101. So he's directly on that. And for my whole life and longer than that, we've been actually subsidizing this to happen all across America. And J.D. Vance said that he was shocked to realize that $8 billion was sent over to California, and it's going to illegal aliens. So we're paying for their food in addition to their free college and their tuition.
You would think so, Kayleigh, but unfortunately, too much of the Democratic Party boss runs on the money that comes from fraud. The NGO network, the political parties, some of the nonprofit organizations in these blue states, they actually depend on the fraud to fund their operations. And to explain this a little bit to the American people, Kayleigh, the craziest thing, I mean, I was literally shocked by this the first time that I realized that when we send, for example, $8 billion to the state of California to run their food stamp program, they don't even verify eligibility. You could have illegal aliens on that program. We have no sense of the federal government. We send them $8 billion. It goes out the door, and we have no way of confirming whether the state of California is actually spending that on needy Americans, because, of course, we want to help people who can't afford a bite to eat. But the program is not there for illegal aliens. It's not there for fraudsters. And what California and so many blue states have done is really turn down the eligibility requirements, turn down the verification requirements, and we unfortunately are just going to have to force them into some basic stuff. Things like checking when somebody signs up for food stamps. Are they in this country legally? Do they actually have proper photo identification? Have they committed a terrible felony in the last couple of years? Basic eligibility checks that so many blue states are not doing. So we're going to have to force them to do that. And that's one of the things we've talked about with our congressional colleagues, is just forcing some of these blue states to share the data. I will say, Kayleigh, in the defense of some blue states, some Democrats have been willing to work with us because they recognize that fighting fraud should be a bipartisan issue. Unfortunately, you've got the Californias and the New Yorks of the world who seem to want their states to be defrauded by the fraudsters, but we can't let that happen. It's gone on for too long, and the president has asked us to stop it. We're finally taking it seriously.
Yeah, it's not fraud for them. It's just a revenue stream. It's just income. So if you cancel the fraud, then all of a sudden they've got no more money. And why would they want to change that? They don't, which is why they're in favor of perpetuating the current system. And the illegal alien problem, for them, it's not a problem. They get a bigger population. They get more benefits that come down from the federal government because they got more mouths to feed, more people to treat in their ER rooms, more schools to fill. So the budget goes up. And they get more representatives every time there's a 10-year census. Oh, guess what? We've got more people here now, and we need more seats in Congress and more electoral votes and more. And then, of course, they know all of those non-citizens will have babies. Those babies will be adjacent to parents who are not citizens, and they'll be in alignment with the policy prescriptions the Democratic Party shovels down their throats, which is, we love immigrants. We'll make them citizens. We'll take care of you, even though we're not even taking care of our own citizens in the actual country. It's a twisted strategy, but it's working for them, which is why we need real serious reform. I would be in favor of just cutting off all the cash. I know Americans would get caught up in that, but at some point, you've got to stop the floodgates that are leaking out American prosperity, and it's happening across the nation. And it's largely, I think, not going to actual Americans as much as it is going to Democratic NGOs, non-citizens, and the communists who are siphoning off of it for their own future power. So we're going to keep our eye on this one. We're happy to see the DOJ is really driving forward on this. It seems insane to think that states would be essentially discriminating against actual citizens. But we've got 17 lawsuits out. We've got big victories on a whole handful of them. Hopefully that continues to spread throughout the other districts. And this problem is solved across the board. And you and your child who want to go to a college in a different state can get an actual benefit, not pay for and subsidize illegal aliens. So we're going to keep our eye on this story and more. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing as we do. All right, friends, what a beautiful day it has been. If you're just getting here, quick recap on what we talked about. First and foremost, the SPLC got blown out today. Southern Poverty Law Center, Democrat Goliath, did their very best to try to dismiss the case against them. They've been criminally charged in the District of Alabama, the Middle District. And the judge, Emily Marks, just came back down and said, there is no vindictiveness at all against you people. All right, so get out of here. You're not getting discovery. You're not getting your charges gone, and go cry somewhere else. Then we saw Ron Johnson and Rand Paul released the Fauci text messages, and boy, oh boy, is that a blood-boiling segment that we just went through. Rochelle Walensky saying in April, it's fine. Go take your jab. You're pregnant. Go take 3 of them. Get a baker's dozen. Yeah, get 1 a month. And then all of a sudden, in their text messages, we learn they had no data. They really had no data, and they were engineering responses to this to say it's all fine, and it's something that was being flagged for them about miscarriages and cytokine storms and more, but they didn't actually communicate that to anybody. They just said, it's all good, go get yours. Then we saw Trump, of course, now coming down and issuing an executive order to limit the slew of jabs that have been mandated across the board, turning that number down into something more manageable and reasonable, and limiting the vaccine industrial complex and their hands across the nation, saying that there will be exceptions and reasons why you don't have to comply with these requirements. Then we saw out of the DOJ, now up to 17 lawsuits to try to equalize American rights across the nation when it comes to college. Connecticut, New York, Vermont now getting added to the list of lawsuits to go after their laws, which are literally being passed, as you saw, titled and passed to help legal immigration, students without legal immigration status pay for college. Oh, it's like wild, man. You imagine like going to a different country, like breaking into their country, and they're like, we're going to help you stay here and get college and pay for your whole friggin' life. What kind of insane system is this? So we read through that. We heard from Stephen Miller. We heard from JD Vance. And it's a beautiful day, my friends. We're glad to have you here. Let's see what you have to say about all of this and more. And then if you're a member, stick around because we're going to hang out for a little bit longer. We missed you this morning. We had a baby's doctor appointment, and I was going to make a post about it, but I literally had a baby in my arm this morning right as the clock struck 10, so I couldn't say anything about it, so I apologize to our members. But we'll hang out for a little bit today and see what else is cooking in our world here. But baby is here. We've got Canon James Gouveia. He's now officially 4 days old. We had a beautiful doctor's appointment this morning, and everything's good. Baby's good. Limbs are moving. Eyes are moving. Hearing is good. Peeing, pooping like a little machine. And it's all good. So we're very happy about it. And a little tired, but we're happy about it. We're getting into a sequence and a rhythm. Those of you, who've gone through this, I think you understand what I'm talking about here. But everything is great. My beautiful wife is doing great. She's moving around a bit more, and everybody's recovering. And so it was really great. And we got a lot of love from you guys. So thank you so much for sending those in. And baby came officially last Thursday, 8 pounds, 1 ounce, 20 inches long, born at 10:40 a.m. on August 6th. What a beautiful day it is. So little Canon James Gouveia is here. He's a handsome one for sure. So, all right, friends, and thank you for that. Thank you for all the love. You guys have been absolutely amazing, and we're very grateful for all your love and support. It's been beautiful. Smiling, frowning, making faces, shocked faces, like, what are you doing? Where am I? You know how they all are, but they're great. And so thank you so much for that. Man, we appreciate you guys. Hey, what's going on over here? We got some comments that came in. Oh, yeah, I swear all serial killers have the same glasses. Thanks, Fauci. It's true. It's true. He might as well be one. I mean, he murdered more than all those people did, arguably. Hilarious. So amazing. Thank you for that. Hey, Toku Lover. What's up, Toku Lover? All right, new member in the house. So stick around and we'll see you in just a little bit. If you're on YouTube, it should auto-magically transfer you over. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next members only morning stream. Members only morning streams might be a little bit wonky for this week. We'll see if we can get, back to a regular cadence at some point, but we've got a lot of baby activities going on over here. But of course, we'll stick around. If we don't have a members only stream in the morning, we'll have an after party. And so we'll, of course, see you hopefully whenever we're here doing member stuff. So Toku Lover, hopefully we see you in a little bit. Loose the Dog. Hey, I hope you, Alexis and Cannon, are doing well today. Praying for you and your family and your listeners to be blessed by the Lord. Fire outside of Reno yesterday. Oh, man, that is a big one, it looks like. Well, hopefully they got that puppy put out. Fires are terrible. Yeah, we get a lot of them in Arizona. They're just terrible. So hopefully they get that put out. Loose the Dog. Sedona. You guys know Sedona. That had a big fire there a couple weeks ago. I think that's done now, but you see it like, oh, gosh, go away. Rain. Please give us some rain. So shout out. Thank you for that. Loose the Dog. Everybody's great. Alexis is great. Cannon's great. And Mama's great. She's doing good. And, it's been amazing. It's really, we feel extremely blessed and we're very grateful. Very grateful. Rhoda Bennett. What's up, Rhoda? Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard in the house. We'll see you in a little bit in the after party. More here. Canonical. Congratulations. What's up? Did I miss a cigar? You did. Yeah, you did. We did. We had baby. Little baby Cannon is here, man. More here. We got one more here in the Gouveia household officially. A real human child. in the house. It's been amazing. So more here. Thank you for that. Thanks for being here for 20 months as a member. That's over 2 babies. So that's a long time. Hey, Jonah Finn, 17 months, almost 2 full babies. Congratulations to you and Alexis and your families. Thank you, Jonah Finn. We appreciate that. Yeah, we've been FaceTiming everybody, just kind of hold the phone up and, Mama G and everybody just like, staring at this little bundle of love. My mom's going to be out here soon. Then Joey's going to be out here soon. I'm sure he'll be making his appearances. And so they'll be coming out very soon as well. Everybody's just thrilled. Everybody's really thrilled, including us. Jonah Finn, thank you. Rob G. Fan, what's up over on Locals? Hey, when my kids were babies, we lived on a farm with an electric gate in the middle of nowhere. Sounds awesome. So when I had them out in their swings, every time I went to get a bottle for them, my auntie would come from nowhere and sit right under them. Every time. She literally watched them for wherever she was napping. Dogs are the best, and Axel will soon be Cannon's BFF, laying close and keeping watch. I think so. He's like doing that right now. Axel, he's just a little skittish. He's like, what is this very loud creature who just came in here? So baby will start crying. He'll come running in, check everything out. Then he's like, all right, everything's safe in here. And then he'll leave again. He's just like, all right, I'm out of here. All right, so he's doing great. But I think you're right. I think, he's a protector at heart. So I think Axel's going to be back in business soon enough. But it is a shocking experience for everybody. So Rob G, thank you for that, man. Congrats to your family. Sounds like a beautiful family. And it's hard. Like you get a newborn. It's hard to just like not stare at this kid. You're just like, just stare at you all day. Creature's little, moving around, shaking, looking at you. It's great. It's beautiful. Chris, you had to have a vaccine ID in 21 to visit your family for Thanksgiving, but didn't need it to vote. No, of course not. Yeah, and they really wanted that. They wanted like a vaccine ID to get on an airplane, to go into certain countries and stuff. I never had to deal with any of that. Like I never traveled anywhere that had that. But I remember reading about it. Right, like Canada. Like I had friends in Canada that couldn't leave. They're like locked in, not allowing them to get on an airplane. It's not funny. It's sick, actually. But you don't need it to vote because voting, they don't want any proof of that happening. But they definitely want proof that you got the pharmaceutical experimental authorization product. So, hey, I refused the jab, but I still have the card I bought on Craigslist. A lot of people were doing that too. I remember that. A lot of people get these cards from, various places. Looks real, pretty real. So good to see you, Chris, man. Glad you're here. Glad you're doing well. And you made it. Hey, Regine, what's up, Regine? Amazing, Regine. We'll see you in a little bit on our after party time. Thanks for becoming a supporter. We appreciate you there. And we'll see you soon. Pookie's Ma. Hey, Pookie's Ma. Thank you for this very nice donation over on Locals. You're amazing. Hey, I'm so incredibly happy for you and Alexis. Babies are such a blessing. It's true. Baby Cannon is so lucky to have you guys. This is a little something for Alexis to buy herself from some comfy PJs or loungewear. Amazing, Pookie's Ma. We'll definitely pass it along. She needs it. She's been amazing. I mean, she's like a superhero. I told her, I'm like, baby, you're like a superhero. I really don't know what else to say. Because this baby, came out and I was there. I caught this little baby coming out. Just incredible. I wanted to gift it to her over the weekend, but missed the live. We were live on Saturday. I'm always here, just rarely live. LOL, I've been here since the pre-Gouveia days. That's a long time. Thanks for your dedication and consistency. Being a daddy looks good on you. Amazing, Pookie's Ma. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I'll make sure we pass that along to Alexis and she gets something nice. Yeah, and I'm not even like drooling on myself right now. I mean, that may happen in a couple of additional days, but like zombified drooling on myself, but that may come soon. So just a little bit of a disclaimer there. Thank you, Pookie's Ma. You're amazing. Thank you for sending some love our way. And Doan, what's up? Hopefully the next piece you do on this story, Jocelyn Benson's crying face will be on your thumbnail. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, we would love to see more of that. Jocelyn Benson, of course, the Secretary of State out of Michigan, who's now running for governor and just won the primary. One of the worst election hack fraudsters, in my opinion. And good at it. Like she's pretty competent at what she's doing. Rigs the entire state, then runs for governor, probably going to win, become the governor, just like Katie Hobbs did. It's the ascendancy track for the blue leftists. Control the election, then rig it for yourself, and then win the governorship. Great. So Dome, and I haven't seen any updates on Jocelyn, but always looking for that. So we'll keep our eye on that one. Thank you, Dome, for the donation. Sharpie Guy, hey, I'm sure you may have already had thoughts about this, Rob, but I will voice it in text here. Fauci and Rochelle are going to experience a very uncomfortable estate or retirement. Well, they seem pretty uncomfortable right now. I mean, Fauci and his wife are like flipping everybody off. We covered that, I think, on Friday. Fauci's wife is like, get out of here. Fauci's so disheveled, he can't even drive. He's in the passenger seat. His wife has to cart him around everywhere. That's how far he's fallen. He's like such a depressive stupor. He's like, I don't feel good. She's like, I'll go take you to get a Happy Meal. Just sit there over there, Anthony. She's like screaming at everybody, flipping everybody off. All their money down the drain for not being honest about anything. Am I right or dead wrong, Rob? Well, I feel sorry for the parents. Gives chills, doesn't it? I'm sure they have a lot of money still, but what good is money? I mean, money's great for a lot of things, but money usually is the product of doing something good. Like if you have a lot of money and everyone hates your guts, I'm sure there's some people who could live that way and do. But ultimately, like if your money comes from doing good in the world and you're successful, then look at these people who have tons of money and they're just miserable. You can see it on their faces. They just look terrible, like their soul has been sucked out of them. And what kind of way is that to live? So you got millions of dollars in the bank, but everyone hates you. Your reputation is in the gutter, and you're responsible for the death of maybe millions of people. So, okay, so what? You have a nice car? Like, does that give you fulfillment in your life? Maybe for some people it does, but if that is you, then what kind of an empty life is that? Like you've just got a big swimming pool or you like fly around on private jets or what? Like what is that? What is the depth of that existence? It feels hollow to me. So I think that's probably where Fauci is ending up. Most of his accolades were coming from the fact that he was revered. And that's why, even though, he may not get prosecuted, I hope he does, believe me, we're staying on that one. But it's the legacy crumbling in front of his eyes that will probably be the biggest punishment of all. I mean, prison would be a good punishment too, don't get me wrong. But the legacy just falling and crumbling. Could you imagine being at the top of the world? Everybody so-called loves you except the people who know. And then the people who know become vindicated. And all of the people who are propping you up slowly start to peel off and you're left alone and empty. Brutal. So Sharpie guy, that's why you have to live with integrity. You can't live just for the money or for the fame or for the accolades. Otherwise, it all comes crashing down. Scott Hotvet, what's up? Hey, thank you, Scott. Nobody in government office tried to stop that madman. Never forget all who push control. Yeah, they were all in on it. Rochelle Walensky, every single day, coming out, reading from her script. We made a lot of fun of her. But they were, LARPing as authority figures and scientists and people who had our best interests in mind as they were taking and making these decisions. They didn't do that at all. And we could see it on their faces. We could see it as they're reading these scripts. It didn't even make internal consistency, logic. And now the truth is coming out. So there's justice in time, and we're coming to that. Scott Hotvet, amazing. Thank you for the donation. We got Goofy for Jesus. Man, I feel goofy for Jesus a lot. Hey, Trump is right on time for y'all. And CJ, hey, that's our boy with vaccines. CJ, man, I didn't think about that. Yeah, Ken and James. With vaccines, y'all are blessed. I literally sent that clip to Alexis. I'm like, look, because we were having a conversation with the doctor today. She's like, you guys getting this vaccine, this vaccine, this vaccine? Alex like, no. So I sent her the clip right after the doctor left. Trump came out. And he said, we're not doing these things anymore. Like, we're not mandating all these things. Like, perfect timing. Congratulations. Great stream and chatters. No jabs for us. Praise God. Goofy for Jesus. Awesome, Goofy. Thank you so much for that comment. It was hilarious. Like we just finished this conversation and then I sent her the clip. I'm like, look, Trump agrees with you, with us, but she was telling the doctor that. Elk Plow, like another says all the time, put your hands behind your back. For Fauci, yeah, just walk on up to the front door. He'll know. He sent a couple FBI agents there. Just, all right, turn around, hands behind your back. And we'll see you in court. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say or do can be used against you in a court of law. I know. Let's go. Perfect. Watch your head in the back of the car. So long, Fauci. Elk Plow, thank you for that, my man. Thank you for being a member. Doan, the medical industrial complex is liable too. Yeah, I think so. True. I think so too. I mean, we got to see it across the board, right? It's everybody who adopted without thinking critically the default standard that was promulgated by our government but knew better, had an inkling, or should have known better. Either they're just, negligent in their health administration. They're just not good doctors because they didn't think these things through and they just regurgitated whatever they were told, which means they're negligent and they should be shamed for that. But if they did know and they were just, acting because it was good for their practice or they were worried about their medical license or whatever, that's a separate type of culpability. And as bad, if not worse. Like they knew and they were still acting against their own knowledge. They weren't thinking, they were being willfully ignorant and then using it as an excuse, deferring everything back to the CDC. CDC said this, Rochelle Walensky said this, Fauci said this, so I'm just doing it. And I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I ran into a lot of that in law. I mean, this show was birthed out of that, essentially. I started speaking out about the lockdowns. I had a bunch of lawyers come out and start attacking me. People I knew and looked up to in Arizona. Like, hey, you should stop talking about this. Your analysis on the government lockdown order, the governor's orders are all wrong, and you're going to be destroying your reputation and shut up and silence yourself. And I lost it. I just totally lost it. And it caused a real, fissure and kind of did harm my reputation with them. Totally did harm my reputation with them. But I didn't care because I'm not going to just sit there and go along with it because I could see an alternative explanation for what was happening. And I cared more about our clients' rights, who had the right to the presumption of innocence and who didn't deserve to be sitting in a jail cell or a prison cell somewhere without process of a defense attorney to represent them. While these other lawyers were like, it's too dangerous to go to court, so we have to close the courts. I'm like, oh, you guys are just pathetic, honestly. So, and I still harbor some, ill will towards those people. But the point is, there are moments in life where I think you have to follow your instincts, follow your heart, even if it's going against the grain. And then if you stay on track long enough, you'll be vindicated. And the people in the medical complexes who did that, I think, are now looked at with more credibility as people who persevered. These doctors and these, I told you so. They're all being, I think, vindicated, and their lives are better because they lived in alignment with the truth rather than just following CDC guidelines or whatever. Thank you, Doan. But there should be a lot of shame that is passed around to the people who just went along and got along, because shame is an appropriate societal response to people who do bad things. Maybe they don't all go to jail, but and we haven't even gotten apologies from anybody. Like, people who were COVID insane, have they ever woken up and said, hey, sorry, I was so insane. Sorry, I was, sending you these emails or sending you these text messages, or sorry, I made you wear, 15 grocery bags and garbage bags before you came over to my house. They ever apologize for that to you? No. They all just moved on. They just blocked it out of their memory. Like that never happened. Okay. One old guy, total contempt. I have total contempt for them. One old guy. I wonder if the SCOTUS birthright will mess all these lawsuits up. Residency and subject to were questions. Catch 22. No, I don't think so, because they're not talking about citizenship. They're just talking about giving a benefit to a non-citizen. These people are not having babies and the babies are being subject to the Connecticut laws. They're just non-residents, right? So they're not actually even citizens. So I don't think it actually applies, one old guy, but it's an interesting, conversation. In other words, it's not about birthright citizenship. It's about illegal alien residency benefits. So a separate issue, but I can see how they could be conflated. Hey, Mark, what's up? Mark Vell, 11 in the house. 8 months as a member, 1 more month, full baby. What's up, Mark? How do I get my tax money back? Man, that's a good question. If anybody knows the answer to this question, let me know. I think it's gone. I think we had to pay for it, and it's now in some illegal alien's bank account somewhere as they're getting educated in Connecticut and Vermont. So I think we're cooked. We still have to pay, otherwise we go to jail. But they get it. So, I don't know. I don't know what we do, but I'll keep thinking about it. If I can find the answer, man, I'll let you know. You find the answer, you'll let me know. Hey, King of Biltong, what's up? Biltong in the house. Did you enjoy your Biltong order? Of course you did. Please leave a review when placing your next one at biltongusa.com. It helps with others find us and means a lot to our small business. Use code Robert for 10% off and get your delicious meats delivered to your door from our friend King of Biltong at biltongusa.com. hopefully those meats are flying off the shelf. Hey, psychological projectionist, what's going on? No one should profit off NPOs, should use salary caps from NPOs like nonprofit orgs or the 501c3s. I'm for 501c3s, like for nonprofits, like Eric's House is a nonprofit. And I think, they do good work and they shouldn't be taxed for providing public services and things. But what ends up happening with a lot of them, and, I think the right should get into the game. Like if these are the rules of the game and the right is not playing this game, then we're at a disadvantage because they're forming all these organizations and they are creating entities that have, a smoother path. In other words, they don't have to pay taxes. So they can raise money and then spend money without getting taxed on it. If you form like an LLC, you're now subject to mass taxation. So you can't have an efficient spend like they do. But I would be in favor of reforming them dramatically, right? But I do think there was an appropriate spot for 501c3s, not when the 501c3s turn into the SPLCs, and then they are not nonpartisan. They are very clearly partisan, living under the scrutiny of no one, essentially. So if the IRS came cracking down on them, then I would be in favor of that. Woodchip Bill, when are we going to meet baby Cannon? It's a good question, Woodchip Bill. Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. I don't know. Alexis and I have kind of differing thoughts on this. Like I wanted to come out with little baby Cannon and like do like the Simba thing, on Lion King. But I got it's a new baby, so we're being a little bit careful at the moment. So I don't know if we're gonna be able to do the Lion King song, but it's a good question. And we had kind of a conversation about this at the virtual baby shower. A lot of people are saying, don't show your baby on camera. Don't show your baby on camera because your child hasn't consented to that and all these things. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm proud. I'm proud of this little creature. So we'll see. Well, I don't know. I know. Yeah, some people, so it's kind of it's a debate that's happening right now. And you got to wait till the baby gets old enough, to decide. And you don't want to use your child as content. So I don't really know. I don't really know what we're going to do. But maybe, maybe we can put like, I don't know. I got to think it through. But man, thank you for even asking about it, Woodchip Bill. Cute little baby. And we're so excited about him. And yes, John said 100% on Alexis' side. Yeah. And protect your family, says Regine Reynolds. Yeah, it's up to Mama. So we're kind of deferring to Mama, and I want to make sure everybody's safe here and everybody's healthy and everybody's good. So it's a good question. But man, thank you for asking about it, Woodchip Bill. Yeah, some people say that's ridiculous. I want to see the baby. 100%. I know. And then others say, don't show the baby. I know it's pretty. I was thinking, like, what if you could do, maybe there's a compromise. Like maybe you could get like those masks with a little nose on there, And apparently, people can get pictures of little babies and do some pretty disgusting things with those. So, also want to be cautious about that. Yeah. But everybody here is just so nice and pleasant, So anyways, thanks for asking about it, Woodchip Bill. That's what we're thinking. And what's up, biology? Rockin' Rob, how tall are you? My 21-inch long turned out 6'2". Holy moly. Well, hopefully our kid is that tall. I'm like 5'9" on a good day. So I don't. Hopefully this little baby's 6'2", but I don't know if that's going to happen. Alexis is pretty little too, and I'm not a tall guy, so that's why I have to do biceps all the time to increase my girth. If I don't have height, I have to increase width. It's my only saving grace. So that's what we're working on. But that's pretty great. Our baby came out at 20 inches, so maybe he'll be a little basketball player, Supreme Court too. That'd be great. Well, you never know. Thank you, biology. What's going on, Sharpie guy? I mean the parents that aborted. I think Sharpie guy you were talking about, yeah. I'm sorry for the, oh yeah, man, I feel horrible for the parents. Yeah, I mean, could you imagine you're pregnant, pregnant couple, you're like, I'm going to go, the CDC said we need to go do this, you go do that, and you like lose your baby? Oh my gosh, it's like horrific. Yeah, it's just terrible. So that's why I think people want justice on that and more. All right, so friends, thank you so much for sending in those donos and for sending in the love. We are so grateful for you, and we appreciate you being here. We had some other comments. Yeah. Damn it, Janet says it's a rapid depopulation shot. Well, yeah, I mean, if all the babies are getting aborted because of the shot, that's going to lower population for sure. Thank you, Janet. Political intelligence. Fauci has earned the title, the notorious Fauci. Indeed. And Darby, the jabs were the clinical trials. It's sickening. They said that. A lot of people are now going, we don't really have good data. A lot of people are going through this. So we will have more data as soon as we test it on them unknowingly. Sick. Neuro D in the house. What's going on, Neuro D? Man, thank you for modding down the fort for us. Check out our watchingthewatchers.locals.com community if you want to join up and become a member. We're going to hang out for a little bit longer and do a little after party time. Take some locals comments, see what else is happening out there. And Neuro D, thanks for sharing that one. You can also, of course, join up on YouTube and we'll see you over there. And then for those who think they deserve an answer but can't get the hint, they don't. B. Torn says, they try to show how well their tiny minds work, and if you don't see any difference, they turn into jerks. Nice. Looks like there's a song over there. Tiny Minds, an ode to Shane. Well, what is Shane? You're saying Shane has the tiny mind? Shane. Get it together, Shane, will you? All right. And Real with Robo, member for 29 months. Can we see Cannon soon? See, that's the great debate. Yeah, that's the great debate. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. We gotta work through it. We gotta process it a little bit further. But Real with Robo, man, I'd love to show them to you. We just want to make sure that we're, being safe and smart and all those things, not reckless, as is my often general nature. But he's a very cute baby. And of course, yeah. So good stuff. Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about that. But Real with Robo, man, thank you for asking about it. We really appreciate you. And friends, we'll pause here on the day. We're going to hang out. If you're on local, stick around. If you're on YouTube, we'll auto-magically transfer you over to the after party. We'll hang out for a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up and call it a night. But it's been a lovely stream. Once again, thank you for subscribing on the way out. Thank you for liking the video if you're not going to stick around. Thank you for coming back tomorrow. We will be back here. We'll get into it again. And of course, we'd love to see you. Big thank yous to our amazing mods and meme smiths. We got Muffin Rando in the house. What's up, John, clipping for us? We got Donut Mind Me. We got K-Bean. We've got Neuro D. We got Janek, Dog Digger, Geegum Geegum on the Rumbles, Elliot, Just Rhonda, and Geegum Geegum. Keeping things nice and beautiful and orderly around here. And members, stick around. We'll see you in a few minutes. Otherwise, my friends, I hope your evening is beautiful and outstanding. You have peaceful, pleasant, restful, and lovely dreams bouncing around your brilliant, beautiful brains. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll get into it again. Maybe we'll have some more Fauci text messages, and it'll be a lot of fun to unpack that and more. But until we're back here, I hope your evening is beautiful, and you join us tomorrow, because in order to do all of this appropriately, we need to see you right back here, so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful evening. Sleep very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Eyes open wide, fighting for freedom. care.